let's get one thing straight before the bots, the blue checks, and the fake moderates start crying. This isn't just some random crime story. This is what happens when the left runs cities into the ground and then acts shocked when normal people get hurt. A journalist gets robbed, dragged down the street, and the police tell him it's his fault for being there? That's not law enforcement. That's ideological enforcement. Welcome to progressive justice, where criminals are victims, victims are criminals, and conservatives are told to shut up and leave. And here's the bigger picture the media will never say out loud. This chaos is intentional. The global elite need instability. They need division. They need Americans scared, angry, and desperate, because scared people don't resist when the next war gets sold to them. The corporate media runs non-stop fear propaganda. NGOs flood cities with policy disasters. Global finance bankrolls collapse. Intelligence agencies play dumb. Tech elites censor dissent. And the military-industrial complex sits there licking its chops, waiting for the next necessary intervention. This is how they manufacture consent. Destroy order at home, blame regular Americans, then tell you the only solution is more power, more surveillance, more money, and eventually more war. And notice how it's always conservative reporters, conservative protesters, conservative neighborhoods that get abandoned by the system. That's not an accident, that's punishment. So if you're wondering why it feels like the country is being pushed toward the edge on purpose, you're not crazy. And if you want the truth instead of the narrative, you're in the right place. All right, let's slow this down for a second, because this story isn't just another headline you scroll past while the media tells you everything is fine. Independent journalist Nick Sorter was out reporting in Minneapolis, doing the thing the press claims to care about, when he gets robbed in broad daylight. His camera equipment gets stolen. He tries to get it back. His hand gets stuck in the suspect's car, and he gets dragged down the street. That's not chaos. That's lawlessness. And right here is where the narrative should be simple. Journalist attacked, criminal caught, law enforced. End of story. But that's not the America the progressive machine has built. Because instead of consequences for the criminals, what do we get? Victim blaming, shrugging. You shouldn't be here. You're causing problems. Just leave the area. Let me say this clearly. When the system tells journalists it's their fault for being robbed, the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was redesigned to do. This is selective enforcement. This is ideological policing. And it only ever seems to go one direction. Now zoom out with me for a second, because this isn't about one camera or one street in Minneapolis. This is about power. The same political class that lectures you about democracy and press freedom is totally fine with reporters being dragged through the street, as long as those reporters aren't repeating the approved narrative. And notice how quiet the media got. No wall-to-wall coverage, no journalists under attack banners, no emergency panels. Because Nick isn't one of theirs. He's not a mouthpiece for NGOs. He's not backed by a global foundation. He's not reading off a script written by some Davos consultant. This is how the global elite operate. They don't need to ban you outright. They just make sure you're unprotected. They let the streets get dangerous. They tell police to de-escalate. They fund activist prosecutors. They weaken law enforcement. Then they sit back while the message spreads organically. Don't ask questions. Don't report honestly. Don't step out of line. And here's the part nobody wants to talk about. This chaos isn't accidental, it's strategic. A country that feels unsafe at home is easier to control. A population that's anxious, divided, and exhausted is easier to manipulate. The media runs fear cycles. NGOs flood cities with failed policies and call it compassion. Global finance bankrolls the collapse and then profits from the cleanup. Intelligence agencies monitor extremism while ignoring real violence. Tech elites censor dissent so you can't even talk about what's happening. And the military-industrial complex? They're just waiting for the moment Americans are desperate enough to accept the next foreign conflict as a distraction. Because that's the oldest trick in the book. When things fall apart at home, you redirect the anger outward. You tell people the real enemy is overseas. You manufacture consent. You sell war as stability. And that's why stories like Nick Sorter's matter. Because if they can normalize journalists being attacked in American cities, they can normalize anything. They can normalize political targeting. They can normalize selective justice. They can normalize a two-tier system where some people get protection and others get told to leave. This is what a controlled decline looks like. Not tanks in the streets, yet, but institutions quietly choosing sides. Law enforcement told to stand down, criminals emboldened, honest reporters punished, and regular Americans gaslit into thinking this is all normal. And here's the truth they hate the most. Americans are starting to notice. People can feel it. They know something's off. They know this isn't organic. They know the rules aren't being applied evenly. So when you hear about a journalist dragged down the street and told it's his fault, understand what time it is. This isn't just a crime story. It's a warning. And the only question left is whether we keep pretending it's random or whether we finally admit the system is being steered on purpose. Now let's talk about the part of this story that should scare you way more than the robbery itself. Because criminals doing criminal things isn't new. That's expected. What's not supposed to happen, ever, is the police siding against the victim. And yet, when Nick Sorter contacts the Minneapolis Police Department, he's told this is basically his fault, that he was harassing people, that he shouldn't be there, that he needs to leave the area. Let that sink in. A journalist gets robbed, gets dragged down the street, and the official response is not, "We'll find the suspect," not, "We'll recover your property," not, "This is unacceptable." It's, "Why were you here?" That's textbook victim blaming, and it's not accidental. This is what happens when law enforcement is no longer allowed to enforce the law, but instead is told to manage optics and protect political narratives. Because understand this, telling the victim to leave isn't about safety. It's about removing the problem from view. It's about making the story go away. It's about protecting the illusion that these cities are functioning normally. And here's the irony. The same political class that chants "believe victims" suddenly has a lot of questions when the victim doesn't fit the approved ideology. Believe victims, unless they're conservative, unless they're independent, unless they're documenting what the machine wants hidden. This is selective enforcement, plain and simple. If you're aligned with the narrative, the system bends over backwards to protect you. If you're not, you're on your own. Or worse, you're treated like the aggressor. And this is where the global elite angle comes in. Because this isn't just local cops making bad choices. This is downstream from years of pressure campaigns, consent decrees, activist DAs, NGO training programs, federal oversight, and media intimidation. Police departments in blue cities have been reprogrammed. Not to stop crime, but to avoid controversy. Not to protect citizens, but to protect careers. Not to enforce law, but to enforce ideology. Ask yourself this: why is the solution always leave the area? Why is the burden always on the victim to retreat instead of the criminal to face consequences? Because when the state stops punishing criminals, it starts disciplining order. Journalists become the problem. Cameras become the problem. Truth becomes the problem. And the message gets sent loud and clear, not just to reporters, but to everyone watching. If you document reality, you're on your own. If you ask for help, don't expect it. If you don't comply, you'll be blamed. This is how controlled chaos works. You don't need secret police when social pressure and institutional cowardice do the job for you. You just make sure the law only applies when it's politically convenient. And don't miss the bigger pattern. This same victim-blaming logic shows up everywhere. Crime, riots, protests, immigration, inflation, foreign policy. Whatever goes wrong, it's never the system's fault. It's always you. And while Americans are arguing over the surface-level chaos, the real power players are untouched. Global finance keeps funding instability. NGOs keep running interference. Tech elites keep censoring footage. Intelligence agencies keep monitoring. And the military-industrial complex keeps waiting for the next excuse to escalate overseas. Because a country that can't protect its own journalists at home is a country being softened up. Distracted, divided, demoralized. So no, this wasn't just bad policing. This was a warning shot. When the police tell victims to leave instead of criminals to stop, the rule of law has already been replaced, and the only question left is how long they think Americans won't notice. Before you click away, understand this. Videos like this don't just underperform by accident. They get buried because the tech elites don't need to ban you anymore. They just quietly choke the reach. Shadow suppression, throttled distribution, limited recommendations, all the polite corporate words for censorship. They'll tell you it's just the algorithm. Funny how the algorithm always seems to hate the truth. So if this video felt like it cut a little too close to home, that's exactly why engagement matters. Likes tell the system this can't be ignored. Subscribes tell it we're not going anywhere. Shares break the filter bubble they rely on to keep people isolated. Every click is friction against a machine designed to keep you passive, distracted, and uninformed. They want this buried because once people start connecting the dots, media narratives, selective law enforcement, NGO money, tech censorship, and the slow push toward chaos, the whole illusion falls apart. So do the simple thing that scares them the most. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone you trust, and keep this conversation alive. That's how the word gets out. No permission required.